did that, I guess, kind of help you find your identity?
Absolutely. Every single part of my journey, because I didn't realize I was on a journey. But we're all on a journey, even if we don't know it. And yeah, when you see that darkness, when you're part of it, when you see the abyss and you kind of look into it, then you can kind of say, oh my God, like that's dark, but there's light over here. There's this great light. And so I think it's contrast. It's great perspective. I think if you've lost yourself, then all you can do is find yourself. So you have a great opportunity there.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Intelligent Conversations podcast. Today, I have the honor to learn from John Laywer. John is the founder of Kishar, which helps people along their spiritual journey. After serving in the U.S. military for years in the Middle East and Afghanistan, he returned home to find that he had many challenges ahead of him. He embraced those challenges, and after much struggle and healing, he found clarity in his purpose for life. He now helps people go through that similar process so that they can experience some of that same clarity. John and I had a fantastic discussion, and we talked about some of the similarities that all of us have in finding our purpose for life. So without further ado, let's welcome John Laywer to the show. I'm excited to learn from you. I actually watched a lot of your videos. You sent me the information, and you just released one a few days ago, right, about Viktor Frankl's work. I actually just added that book, Man's Search for Meaning, to my queue. So it was actually kind of great. I'm like, man, I just added this to my queue. And man, what were your thoughts on that book, though? Like,
yeah, I tell you, it's one of the most powerful books I've ever read, especially the first 2/3 of it, where he's talking about his experience in life and at the camps. The last third of it's about kind of like the logotherapy and his psychotherapy. It's not quite as good in my opinion, but that first 2/3 is some of the most powerful writing I've ever read. Like it's just, I mean, because when he went in, he was a psychiatrist. So like he went into the camps like semi-prepared compared to a lot of humans, right? But so I think that's one reason he's able to communicate it so effectively, maybe. But yeah, it's just I think if someone can find meaning in life and work their way through that kind of suffering, then I think we've all got a shot.
Yeah, I agree. And yeah, suffering is it's normal, and everyone experiences it. And I mean, obviously no one can compare to what he went through. Kind of, I mean, you even mentioned that in the video you did. It's like, yeah, no one can really top being a Holocaust survivor. That's it's one of the hardest things to go through. But then you also mentioned some of your experience as well, and kind of added on to that. Can you kind of like refresh my memory and share a little bit about that?
Yeah, my own experiences. I was just a kid. I joined the Army straight out of high school. I was still a kid, and I think when you're young, you got these idealistic ideas about changing the world and making it a better place, and going and seeing the world and seeing these adventures. Lawrence of Arabia had kind of fascinated me as a kid, so I'm like, I want to go to the Middle East. I want to do that, and be careful what you wish for because it happens. And
yeah, didn't you get deployed there?
Yeah, I got deployed to Kuwait right after 9/11, and I spent 2.5 years of my life there in Kuwait, and which is half my Army enlistment was spent there. And I got to meet people and see things, and then I spent time in Baghdad. And
you also spent some time in Afghanistan, right, and all that.
I spent 6.5 years consecutively in Kandahar, Afghanistan, which is probably my most formative experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you mentioned that in your introduction. Introduction to your like YouTube channel and stuff is kind of there was when you had like your spiritual rebirth, if I say it that way, but is that kind of what happened there?
Well, I wouldn't end up having my spiritual kind of awakening until I came home and healed for a few years after coming back from Afghanistan. But Afghanistan was the last place I was, and having been there for so long, it was this intense thing where I was working 100, 110 hours a week for 7 days a week for years on end. So it was like this like never ending experience that lasted for, and it was unending and it just kept going. So it was like this, like, I don't know how I lived through it looking back. I don't know how I stayed like functioning, person.
Well, I mean, my guess is Army and all that trains you to handle extreme conditions. So, I mean, I could be completely wrong, but I'm sure.
No, I mean, I was conditioned to do the job, accomplish the mission. And, by that, the Army does prepare you for that. And then by that time I had gotten out and I was a civilian, but I was still doing the same thing. And I was surrounded by military. I was just a civilian doing the same job. And yeah, it was exciting. I mean, I don't want to take away, it was a dark thing. It was this dark machine that we're part of, but it's also exciting work. So it's complicated and you get addicted to it. Soldiers don't talk about it very often, but you get addicted to helicopters and planes and the excitement, the adrenaline, it's a thing.
Yeah. That actually reminds me of a story someone told me. Oh my gosh. I'm trying to remember the name, but he was a teacher of mine and he shared, he's like, everyone thinks like having a fast car is cool until you get in like a fighter jet. And then after that, you're like, cars are stupid. And going like breaking the sound barrier is way more fun than just driving a car fast.
It's all perspective, right? Like what's your perspective of what, and I think the more you look at performance athletes or people that do extreme sports or whatever, and the same thing happens, like you keep chasing the next thing and more of it and for longer. And it actually physiologically, I would find this out later on when I was healing, when I went to the VA, but like, your amygdala, there's parts of your brain get rewired. The biochemistry changes. And so you physiologically are different, so it's not just a mental thing. It's this physiological change in your brain and your chemistry that if you're exposed to trauma for long enough, it's really hard to fully ever completely, you can make your peace with it, but it's hard to fully come back from it.
Dang. Yeah. So, I mean, we've mentioned it a few times, but the healing. So 2 questions here. What were you healing from?
Right.
Is question number 1. And then number 2, what did you do to heal from that?
Those are good questions. So I was healing from, I didn't have an identity. I didn't know who I was outside of this person that I had been, this job that I had done, the system that I've been a part of. So I was healing from depression, anxiety, PTSD, even OCD, just you name it. I had physical ailments. I had Gulf War syndrome. I've been exposed to depleted uranium, stuff like that. And so I had migraines. And so just all this physical stuff, but all this obviously mental stuff. And then that combination of the two. And so I was healing from all that. And how to heal was the question. I was kind of in shock when I came home. Like the world was different than when I had left it. I kind of like lost my youth with having ever been young, like experiencing youth. So I skipped over that part of my life, and so I never had really grown up, because I'd been in the system. I've been, almost in an institution. So you're institutionalized a bit. And so I never really become an adult. I theoretically knew how to be an adult, but it was, I had to learn that a little bit. And how to heal, I went to the VA and I asked for help because I was completely broken, and they helped me. They got me with a therapist, and I saw him 2 or 3 times a week, and time helped as well. And it was really just kind of putting the pieces back together, like one small fragment at a time. But even then it took me, I think I was kind of just wandering around for 7 years. Like it was a long time.
Man. And what'd you say through that wandering though? You found like your identity?
I did eventually.
The only reason I say that is because I think sometimes you have to wander to like kind of explore new ideas, new concepts, whatever it may be. And maybe in the moment that feels like a, terrible experience. I mean, I can't even imagine the stuff you went through, but I don't know. Did that, I guess, kind of help you find your identity?
Absolutely. Every single part of my journey, because I didn't realize I was on a journey. But we're all on a journey, even if we don't know it. And yeah, when you see that darkness, when you're part of it, when you see the abyss and you kind of look into it, then you can kind of say, oh my God, like that's dark, but there's light over here. There's this great light. And so I think it's contrast, it's great perspective. I think if you've lost yourself, then all you could do is find yourself. So you have a great opportunity there. Um, and and so I think all of that led to there's all these small things I can look back on in my life and say, a couple of years ago when I kind of had this spiritual moment of extreme understanding and clarity, it hit me like a bolt of lightning. There's a ton of stuff that I think led to that. And I think if I'd have never had this dark path that I've been on, I may never have found this great light and had this spiritual moment where I felt like I understood the universe. I felt a oneness and this kind of amazing thing that changed my life.
Like a part of something bigger. I think that's something we all are chasing, right? We want to leave something behind that's meaningful and has the ability to change the world, I think, is maybe what we all desire.
In my understanding, as I had it, with this oneness, with this understanding of connection to everything, I had this innate understanding that to change the world, I got to change myself. I have to love myself. I have to take care of myself. And if I do that, and I have this loving kindness within me for myself, then suddenly I lift up the world around me. I make the world a better place. And I don't make the world a better place by, I stopped arguing with strangers on the internet, and I stopped arguing with my family about politics. Because what's that going to change? That's not going to change the world. It's not. So but loving my neighbor, loving myself, loving my neighbor, and loving everyone around me, that can change the world.
For sure. It definitely can. And it reminds me of this story that where they talk about like sometimes I think it was about a young boy came up to this guy that older gentleman that was about to die, and he was like hey, like, can you give me some advice, whatever it may be. And he's like, you have to understand that sometimes maybe your purpose isn't as grand as it seems to be. And but then he went on to share a story, and he's like, I helped this person up and was nice to them and kind, and it really helped, let's say, their self-esteem, their self-confidence, and they went on to pioneer I think it was a new form of farming, and that's actually contributed to like how we can produce more food on smaller plots of land. And it's like you never really know the impact you leave, so just kind of be nice to everyone was kind of his thing he was saying. But he went on and just this awesome story and shared that, and how at the end of the day, like, just you want to leave something here, and might as well be something good. So on that note, this is something I would say just I've noticed even just in myself, but like sometimes you like, especially with how everything's online nowadays and where we're constantly comparing ourselves to others, and even I like to say you'll never find a harsher critic than yourself. And that's definitely true. So sorry, I'm kind of running circles, but to a degree, sometimes that criticism can be helpful because it pushes you to be better. But like you said, sometimes it can actually hurt you. So where's kind of that fine line of like, hey, this criticism is going to push you to be a better person, or hey, this criticism's not like helping you at all?
That's a good question. I love talking about those fine lines because I think the balance really interests me in the universe. So I like that question. I think first of all, we have our base intuition, our universal intuition that's connected to the universe, kind of the everything, our divine self, whatever, however you want to see it. People call it different things. That's our intuition, right? That base feeling we have of things. Then we have our mind and our ego that are really helpful. They're logical. They're thinking. They've kept us alive for thousands of years. They're really good at that. But they're kind of noisy. They're always saying stuff. They're always telling us something. So there's that line, I think, is that balance between your mind and your ego, who can give you really useful information, and your intuition, that connection to your divine self, that's going to tell you kind of a feeling of what's right, what works, and what doesn't. And so I think you can combine those things, and that's how you can kind of get to a place where you can see how to navigate that fine line.
Yeah, thank you. That helps a ton. And on the topic of ego, I think that's that plays against us quite a bit because, man, yeah, we could really dive into that. So how do you guys kind of set it aside and actually do, like, put forward some action? Because, I mean, right, we're talking about this great stuff of like setting aside your ego, but how do you kind of make it into like action and reality? Because
how do you do it, right?
I mean,
yeah,
how do you do it?
Damn it, that's a great question, and I do have an answer for it, I think. But that question, I think that boils down to everything in spirituality. I think that boils down to everything that people are searching for, and it's, how do I quiet the mind and the ego? How do I get that ego to just kind of shut the hell up sometimes? Like it's so loud, you know. And that's, I think you want to be more in touch with that self inside, that big self with a capital S, not your name, not your job, not your all this stuff that you have, but yourself, like who you are, deep inside. And when you get in touch with that, then you start to think, I don't want to live in the past. I don't want to be attached to all this stuff from the past. It doesn't serve me. It's part of who I am. I can appreciate that. I can use it, but it doesn't serve me to keep thinking about it over and over and over again. And the future is not going to help me because the future is not set. It may never happen. Something different may happen. The future is this very ambiguous thing. And so it's that present moment that always comes up in spiritual conversations, living in the present. And the present moment is this place where you're able to live here now, appreciate, be happy, be joyful. You can be sad, but process emotions as they come to you and say, I'm going to process this emotion. I'm going to process this thought, this feeling. I'm going to use it, and I'm going to let it go. And move on to something else, and move and experience the world around me. Be happy that I'm either watching this movie and not doing something else, or whatever it is. Like, you can be present, you can appreciate that moment.
I like that. So on that, I 100% agree that the present moment is important. And on the future though, there's this point that someone made. They actually did like they used statistics or whatever, but they said, what are the odds that you know what's going to happen tomorrow? It's like, yeah, you have a pretty good idea, but then 5 years, 10 years, as you start getting bigger and bigger, it's like, do you really know what's going to happen? And it's, no, you don't. At the end of the day, like, the probabilities that you can predict what's going to happen in 5 years continues to decline. So sometimes though, I think if we're too in the present moment, maybe that can impact our future selves. Does that kind of make sense? So how do we make sure then that we can still enjoy the present moment without, affecting maybe potentially the future?
It's a great question. And I think that people have to look at that intersection between enjoying today, living the moment, being their spiritual self as well, and that intersection of our day-to-day reality. We occupy with ourselves, we occupy with all these other people and the world around us. And we have to live in that, where most of us aren't going to go live in a monastery and just hang out in the present moment all the time. It's going to happen. So to live in the present moment, yes, you're going to have to do your future self a solid, you know. And the thing is, if something is coming up that you kind of need to do for yourself, do that thing, just do it. And if something comes up that you can't do anything about, that that you would like to do something about, but you can't, and it's not going to change any outcome, then why worry about it? I think you have to do your future self a solid from time to time, be an adult, live in this real world, be grounded, be centered. I mean, in addition, you have a lot more space and time to be your spiritual self and be present if you're centered and grounded in your sleep and your fitness, your nutrition, your overall health and wellness, your relationships. So yeah, it's a complex system that we exist in.
Yeah. So almost like taking care of maybe some of those other needs. So like you mentioned a few, right? Like your physical health, mental health, whatever it may be. And then kind of I guess if you can call it spiritual health as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of it. Yeah. It's that alignment of mind, body, soul. And
making sure you have like balance, so to speak. Like just
always balance.
Always. So on that note, though, then how do we improve? Because I think you have to almost tip the scales to be unbalanced in order to like progress forward. So, but then you have to bring them back up to kind of like, and it's this never ending process.
I love your question. I love your question because it's like, well, if I'm living in the present moment, how can I ever have a goal and meet a goal? So it's a worthwhile question. And the answer is, what's your higher purpose? So like what is your higher purpose, your dharma? We each have our own higher purpose or dharma that we're meant to live. It's probably different for every single person. And so do you know what it is? If you don't know what it is, definitely find out and figure that out. And then once you know what it is that aligned with how you're living every day? Because then you're getting to goals. Then you're living that purpose, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that kind of it reminds me of the quote of like your thoughts become your actions and then actions become your destiny or something like that. And
right.
You have these thoughts in your mind of like, hey, this is what I think I should do and kind of the direction I should head. But then you need to actually implement it. And so I am curious about this. What would be like, what's your goal setting strategy? I mean, obviously this is the new year, so I have to ask that question, but like, how do you like set goals to like progress towards maybe that vision for yourself?
Yeah, exactly. For me, I know what my higher purpose is. My higher purpose is to help people help themselves find their wholeness inside, whether they see it or not, find their light, help them down the path. Maybe I can help people get down it quicker than I got down it. And so if I know that's my purpose, that's my dharma, then the goals that I set for myself are to make that happen. So I have my online spiritual community, my nonprofit. I make sure that I take care of it and I make it a place where people can feel safe and secure and share their journeys and all that. But I also make sure that I'm trying to treat myself right, my own mind, body, and soul, exercise, fitness. I don't know. I'm not perfect. I don't always hit those goals. Right. But I work towards it and I try to keep awareness and be intentional with it so that I'm moving in that direction so that I can stay healthy, so that I can stay joyous and happy, so that I can continue to be there for myself, which I think is super important, but also then be there for other people along the way. So then all these goals are in line with what my overall higher purpose and dharma in life is.
That's cool. That's really cool. And so you mentioned your practice that you opened up and how it aligns with your purpose and how you want to help other people along this journey. And correct me if I'm wrong. I may be saying this wrong, but it's called Kishar?
Kishar, yeah.
Kishar. Okay, that was close. But how did you go about starting that? Because, I mean, for one, I mean, you went and you were seeking out help and going on a journey yourself, but now you kind of flipped it and now you're helping others. So how did that transition work?
Well, when I had my moment of understanding or clarity or whatever over 2 years ago, I said, I know I want to help people help themselves, find their wholeness. How do I do that? So I knew instantly kind of that I wanted to create something nonprofit online for spiritual connection, because I felt like there was a space for like authentic, meaningful connection in our digital era. And I thought I can do this. And so I resolved to kind of work every single day to make that happen. And I'd have, which is cool. It's nice to be able to say, I'm going to do something.
That is
cool. Be able to go do it. Right. And you know, it's hard. Like you have a podcast. It's not easy. It takes a lot of intention and awareness to do it. Right. So that was the start of it. And it was the process of figuring out everything that comes with it, from the technical side of establishing an online community to the creative side of content that put out, to the administrative side of creating a nonprofit, to talking about people, just like coming on a podcast and saying, hey, this is what I believe in the world, and getting my message out, and hopefully it resonates with people. So it's all that stuff. It's a lot of stuff. It occupies most of my time. So.
I'm curious, how does it work online? Because I think with something, I mean, obviously this touches home for everyone, because everyone has a different walk of life where they find meaning. So how do you like do this online? Because there is, I mean, we even probably sense it a little bit. There's kind of that barrier, and you try your best to break it, but it's still there, type of thing.
Yeah, I believe that we break it down. We break down that barrier by approaching it in a way, saying we can do this, being open-minded about it, and saying I'm going to be a more spiritually and physically and mentally aligned person if I'm around people that resonate with how I think. And we can think different things. I can come and say, I believe in this philosophy or this spirituality or this religion, but I'm not tied to the dogma of it. And I can practice it and experience it next to you, and we can do different things, whatever resonates for us individually. So it's about breaking down barriers. It's about having an open mind and saying we can find connection in a digital world. I think it's got to be a little bit intentional. I think you have to have some intent behind it, and say, but also look at what the benefits that it can bring you, you know.
On that, I just had the thought, you mentioned regardless, like you still will talk with people, and you know, all that, with regardless of their dogma. And I think sometimes we get so obsessed with kind of the rules of maybe a particular religion or whatever it may be. And the rules are great, right? They kind of point you in the right direction. But at the same time, it's like, you got to find out, like, what is it you believe? What do you believe is right, and what do you believe is wrong? And kind of find those core principles. And I think there are some universal truths that most people kind of agree on. But I don't know. What do you think? Is there... Yeah.
I'm a universalist, so I believe that all spiritual constructs, religions, philosophies, self-help ideas, I think it's all valid. Science, atheism, I'm for it all. I think it's all saying very similar. I think we're all saying very similar things. I've read a lot, I've studied a lot, and there's tons. It's less of like overlapping Venn diagrams, and it's kind of it's a lot of circles that are overlapping. Not exact, but like you said, the base teachings, like every religion is founded around, like most of them are founded around the idea of the golden rule. You know, there's that aspect of it, like do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You can see it across all these different faiths and philosophies. So it's about, there's the base teachings of religions that's kind of like these very base pure things, and then there's all of the dogma around it that humans have put on it over years or centuries or millennia. I think if you kind of get through all that, you remove kind of all that stuff and look at the base teachings of different faiths and spiritual philosophies, it's all very similar, and so we should be able to start asking each other questions so that we can learn from one another. I think the questions can change, the answers to those questions can change, and we can learn new things. You know, suddenly we're better off for it because we're And what you believe, what I believe, are going to be vastly different from an internal perspective, and that's okay. We should have our spirituality should be fiercely personal and unique. That's perfectly fine. But let's talk about it in the meantime.
Exactly. No, I agree with that 100%. No, that's something I've just noticed too, that I agree with, is like almost every religious group or whatever it may be have similar, like, kind of, you said, core principles, but then, right, they have their rules, dogma that kind of vary. And what's ironic about that is that's what they fight over. It's not like, hey, look, we got this in common. The stuff they're fighting over is the random rules that they kind of implemented themselves. I'm like, look, at the end of the day, like, you guys are saying a lot of the same things. It's just maybe how either one, you're interpreting it, or two, it's like you're just fighting over things that, quite frankly, in the bigger picture, I think don't really matter. But I don't know, that's just my 2 cents.
And if you're living the base teachings of any religion, essentially, it's usually pretty accepting of anyone else, even if they're not in your religion or not in your spiritual practice. And it all very much goes into love your neighbor, loving kindness, whether it's the teachings of Gautama Buddha or the red letters of the New Testament and Jesus Christ. It's all very similar.
I like that. Well, John, man, I hate to wrap this up, but
it's okay.
Thank you for coming on and sharing your insights with us and kind of what it is you do. And on that, can you share a little bit about like Kishar and kind of some of your offerings, what you do and things like that?
Sure. We have daily meditation, affirmation. We have conversations that kind of like you and I are having right now. We have those conversations on Zoom. We have them in chat. And we also, as part of the nonprofit community, we offer individual one-on-one spiritual guidance and coaching. We have a pretty cool YouTube channel. Our main website is kishar.org, KISHAR.org, and that's where they can find everything about us.
Awesome. Yeah, no, that's cool. And I mean, I can vouch for the YouTube. It's really, really well done. So you do a good job with that. It's at least, I mean, I haven't watched every video, but I watched the intro video that I'm sure everyone sees, and then the one you released a few days ago about Viktor Frankl, and that's really, really well done. So, well, thank you for coming on, John. I appreciate the knowledge and stuff you shared. All right, everyone, as you can tell, that is John Laywer. He's a very intelligent person, has great things to share. I challenge you guys, if anything spoke to you, or if you'd like to reach out to John, to do that. I think he'd be happy to help you, and he left you the information there, so you can do just that. Stay tuned till next week. We have a great guest lined up for you guys. See you guys next week, and let's get after it. Hey everyone, if you liked this episode and would like to hear more, be sure to hit that subscribe or follow button. We release a new episode every Wednesday for you guys to listen to. Thank you guys so much for the support that you give. We could not have done this without you guys. If you would like to be a potential guest on the show, check out intelligentconvos.com and fill out the form there. Thank you guys again, and let's get after it.